I just heard the moderator, Monica Jones, will be a bit late, and I've been asked to jump in. So, ladies, if that's okay for you, I would kick this off. And the idea is that we would first introduce ourselves. And maybe, Christina, if I could ask you to start with stating who you are and the company you're representing.
My name is Ibiyemi Olufowobi, and I'm Director Network Operations, Ray Power FM. Ray Power FM is an arm of Dark Communications PLC, which is domiciled in Nigeria. We are the first private network, private radio network in Nigeria. Dark Communications was founded by a marine engineer, Chief Dr. Raymond Aliogodokpesi, way back in 1993-94, when we kicked off commercial broadcasting, and we're the first private radio company in Nigeria. And we pioneered 24 hours broadcasting in Nigeria. Before then, broadcasting in Nigeria was you put on your television at 4 in the evening, and by 12 midnight, everything is over. That's for television and radio. 12 midnight, everyone goes to bed. But with the coming of Ray Power changed the landscape of broadcasting in Nigeria. We are presently in 16 locations across Nigeria, and we broadcast network and local. That's it for now.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot of follow-up questions on that. But for now, I would also ask Christina to please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Dora Glotman. I'm international news editor for Semana Group. We are based in Bogotá, Colombia. And we've been going through major changes in the last few years. We've been a magazine for over 35 years. We're the #1 magazine in Colombia, leading in opinion, of course, in politics, economics. It has been by far one of the most important magazines in all of Latin America. That is Semana magazine, for 38 years. But the last few years, we've been going through major changes. We've become the #1 website in Colombia, news outlet, also with El Tiempo and El Espectador. But we become a very important outlet in our media work, and also, of course, in social media. And that has been very interesting because it has allowed us to compete with the rest of the world. Before, we were doing the magazine, which was, of course, news regarding Colombia, a lot of analysis regarding Colombia. But we've moved on to being a media outlet, and that has allowed us to reach many places in the world. It has allowed our audience to grow so much during this period of pandemic. Our website has grown in almost 300% since the pandemic started, and we've become a very important outlet for Colombians to be able to touch base, to see what's going on in this moment of so much uncertainty, in a moment of so much anxiety as well. Semana is happy to have become a Semana.com, to become a place where people come and see news and also find some sort of comfort in knowing that we're still here, and that, and the journalists in this difficult time, we're still doing our job best we can under challenging circumstances. But we're happy to be able to do our job and offer this service, which is, what we love.
Thank you very much, Doria, and I'm sorry for referring to you as Christina. So as I said, I jumped in 1 minute before the start of the panel. My panelist still says Christina. Let me also quickly introduce
Christina, because Cristina Castro was going to be with you today, but she asked me to sit in because since I'm the international news editor, so she thought it would be wonderful for me to sit in, and I'm just very happy to be represented. Yeah.
Great to have you. I'm proud to be part of this round, also as a panelist. My name is Nick Brembring. I'm the CEO of a company called Zatu. and Zatu distributes TV, both in closed IPTV, so we cooperate with internet service providers and build an IPTV service for them. And we also have our own business-to-consumer brand, Zatu, which is an OTT service, also distributing classical television. And my first question would be a follow-up to what you said, Doria. You already talked about the pandemic and the impact, and if I understood correctly, it's a 300% growth in audience, which is amazing. So would you say the situation was a chance for classical news to also differentiate itself against the social media, because you have a brand, you have that trust? Is that the differentiator? Is that what people were looking for?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the pandemia, it came together at a time when fake news also started, becoming such a phenomenon. So I think the combination of both made people feel comfortable going to traditional media at this time for news regarding COVID, because news regarding COVID, the government was giving us information as far as how many cases, when the vaccines were coming in, fortunately, when that started happening, but also how many hospitals we had available and the whole situation in Colombia. So I think that it turned out to be that in a moment of crisis, especially when it was related to our health, many people felt more comfortable going to a news media with a tradition as serious as Semana to get their information regarding COVID, as opposed to this time around sticking to social media. So because social media can be mixed with a lot of fake information and fake news, which in this particular moment, it was a question of life or death. So it was a very interesting episode, to see people trusting so much traditional media, and that's why we grew in this incredible amount, basically because it was a time where we needed the comfort of real information.
And let me provoke you a little. Is that 300% growth here to stay, or do you have to wait for the next crisis?
I think that is a very good question. The next crisis, unfortunately, is already here. In Colombia, we're going through a political crisis. We're going through an economic crisis. And when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to riots, as we've seen, maybe you remember during the whole Arab Spring, do you remember that there were people tweeting from Egypt? And, we're seeing a little bit of that. We're seeing a lot of people in the field during the riots using social media to put out information. So, yes, in the pandemia, we became very strong. Now social media becomes again a competition in a way, and challenging for us as journalists, because we have, kids out and young people out in the middle of the riot, and they have a cell phone, and a lot of people with a cell phone today, they become journalists and somehow. So yeah, that is challenging.
Very interesting, thank you. Ibiyemi, how did the pandemia impact your business?
I would say that it was, first of all, it came as a shock. And then we had to sit up. Reality was staring us in the face. And we asked ourselves, what do we do? Because if you understand the Nigerian climate, here in Nigeria, everybody, and I dare say everybody, is a journalist. Everybody, once you have this thing called the cell phone, everybody shares all kinds of information. And we saw that we had, just as she said earlier, Christina said earlier, we had a problem on our hands. We've had an experience with, it was the media that really helped then to ensure that the spread of Ebola in Nigeria was brought to a halt. If not, for a city like Lagos, it would have been catastrophic. So what we did immediately was to tin information, disseminate information in the local languages, because here we saw that people were sharing all kinds of things. Let me give you an instance. During Ebola, what they said, what no, they started sharing around was use salt, put salt in your bath water, and you will not contact Ebola, which is not true, but it spread like wildfire. And unfortunately, some people died, drank salt water, used salt water to have their bath. So we saw that there was a need for us to step into the game and ensured that we did jingles, we spread out information. We had special programs on COVID. Now, how did this affect us? Economically, I think the word I will use is traumatized. We were extremely traumatized economically because everything just came to a halt. Now, the internet in Nigeria, yes, there is the internet, but it's not that strong. And for now, data is still pretty expensive. So what happened next was that we were now spending more on data. This was unbudgeted for, but we had no choice. We had to send some people to work from home. The more than 50% of the workforce work from home. And then we decided to create camps, living camps, and bought materials, had cooking facilities for people to stay in the premises, to live in the stations,
So they would
because
get
here
tested
in
and
Nigeria,
then stay there.
yes, here in Nigeria, the initial thought of the people was that it was not true. And unfortunately, we still have those thoughts by some people. Some believe that it is a disease of the wealthy. It is a disease of those who travel all over the world, that the ordinary man on the streets cannot contact the disease, which wasn't true. So we tried everything possible to tell the people, through our various stations, that this is a national problem, not just a national problem, it was a worldwide problem. And the earlier we believed what was happening in every part of the world, Nigeria inclusive, the better for all of us. And then they started understanding it when prominent names came down with COVID and had to come out to share their experience. Those that were fortunate to be able to share their experience, some unfortunately died. And that was when the belief came in. And that was when people started believing what we were saying.
Wow, powerful. I have a question to both of you, since this panel is also around cooperations. Maybe jumping back to you, Doria. Who were your most important partners, or who are they right now? Delivering
Our most,
people.
our most important partners right now are not so much international, but rather national. We've been creating alliances with regional news organizations, and that is extremely valuable, especially at a time when traveling, because of the pandemic, has become so difficult, and when the pandemic has hit different regions in our country harder than others. And again, as I was telling you before, we have this combination of riots um, in the middle of this crisis, which has made our COVID numbers go way up. So our alliances have been mostly with regional and small TV stations, radio stations, newspapers, where we can collaborate, and they are in touch with us. Of course, we have our main office, we have a building in Bogota, but from here, we have been able to collaborate with all of these smaller regional newscasts, which really are incredibly valuable. Sometimes when you're in the capital, you're getting all the information wrong. Sometimes when you're in the capital, what you're receiving it really has gone through so many mouths. It's almost like word of mouth by the time it comes to us. And sometimes, so it's been very valuable to count with journalists that are literally on the ground in the most difficult parts of the country, and they've been collaborating with us a lot throughout this period.
Thank
For
you.
us, the collaboration has mainly been with government, because in this part of the world, you indeed need the government to help you to get the correct information, to be able to disseminate the information. Now, we have some the regulators, the local media regulators in Nigeria, we are not allowed to collaborate with news, particularly, because you must have editorial control when it comes to news station here in Nigeria. So if you don't have editorial control, you're not allowed. But what we did was we thought of the mental health of the people. There is a life outside COVID. We tried to ensure that COVID itself did not take over everything. And it was very pleasant to us that we had established a relationship with an organization like DW Deutsche Welle. And with Deutsche Welle, what we did was to ensure that the sports programs that we had with Deutsche Welle went on in spite of everything. Because if those programs had stopped, it would have, it would have gone traumatized the people. Because at that point, it was like anytime you listen, everything was COVID, COVID, as though there was nothing else happening in any part of the world. Everything was all about COVID. And people, I personally, I was tired of COVID. I was tired of hearing anything about COVID. I wanted some other information. I wanted entertainment. I wanted a semblance of normality. Let life come back to normal. And so, what we have been doing is to collaborate with artists, collaborate with organizations like Deutsche Welle, which I made mention of earlier, to take entertainment programs going outside COVID. And with the artists, we talk entertainment, but at the same time, we weave in the issues of COVID. So we're doing what we call infotainment at the same time.
And how did that work
that's
out?
an interesting idea. How did you call it? Infotainment?
Infotainment. Information and entertainment.
I'm going to adopt that one. I'm going to start using that one as well, because I have to agree that this is a moment where COVID. We've been talking so much about the pandemic of COVID, but there was also the possibility of a pandemic of mental health. Right after the
Yes.
pandemic for COVID, which is why I think that your idea of infotainment, I'm going to have to think how I say that in Spanish, is so valuable, because suddenly entertainment and even sports, now they're playing soccer again, some sort of championship, which I don't follow, but it has allowed a little bit of air. We're getting some fresh air from sports, from entertainment, and I think what you're saying about mental health is so important. We have been so focused on COVID that it's time to start freshening up with other things, because people are starting to get extremely anxious, and it's really important to think of the role that media plays in all of this. Maybe we do need to start looking at optimism. We need to start talking about hope. We need to start talking about life, and not so much about death and illness. I think you bring up a really important point there.
I also, if I may just come in, I also had a friend, a past schoolmate, and this is one of the things we did also. We hooked up with people that we knew in different parts of the world to get fresh information on what was happening in their parts of the world. I have a friend in Spain, and what he did was to get linked up through Linked Up, and we started exchanging information. We have lots of Nigerians living in that part of the world, in Spain, in Italy, and these two countries were severely hit by the pandemic. So he was exchanging information with us, and we were telling him what was happening also in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
I love where this is going. We have roughly 5 minutes left for the closing round.
Wow.
You already kind of showed the way out of the pandemic, at least, in our minds already, to look at what's next, at getting back to a bit of normality. So for me, a bit of normality, for instance, is actually the Euro Cup. I wasn't following it very closely, but I've seen some matches and people in the stadiums. So you get you watch football and you have football sound instead of silence, things like that. But then, of course, also here in Germany, still little kids need to wear a mask in school. And then, of course, pressure is growing. Hey, football players can play without a mask. Why do children still have to wear it? So I think everybody is really keen on also looking at other topics than the pandemia. And at the same time, I think there are some learnings. Maybe in the end, we can use this whole tragedy for the better in the long run. So my question to both of you would be, what are your learnings? Maybe even a piece of advice to people in media. What can we make of it?
I think you want to go ahead?
Okay. For us, we have learned a lot. And the very first learned was that we didn't need large workforce that we had. There was a need, we saw that we could actually trim down the workforce, put more money into technology. Well, it's sad, but then that's the way it goes. It's a business. Trimmed the workforce, made some people to work from home. Some people could stay away, and some could do the full work from the station, but then invest more technology. And this is an ongoing thing. Smaller teams, more investment in technology. I've been trying to do that, but the pandemic actually made it compulsory for us to do. And we saw that we could even do more with technology. I'll give you an instance. We have a monthly discussion on your station, and on television we had meetings, which was done virtually. And that, it brought in a lot of people. People it. I dare to say that we helped the networks make money because more people purchased. We were able to connect with Nigerians from all over the world. The last monthly discuss we had with people that we did not even expect to come up. And they only could come up because it was digital. It was a virtual meeting. So and I think this is the way forward. There is no station that can afford to stay back now. It's the way forward.
Great. Doria?
Yeah, well, our experience has been similar. Of course, we had to cut down on staff and start depending a lot more on technology, and we've learned a lot about technology. So much so that is definitely going to be here to stay, and it's going to grow. And as you were saying, from Nigeria, we've been able to have meetings involving a lot more people. Suddenly, once the initial trauma of being caught up, being at home and not being able to go out has started to give us different opportunities with technology to grow, and much more than we ever imagined we could before pandemia. But as media, I think that another point of history, media has been so important in rebuilding after wars, and I think we've gone through a third world war. That's it. How I've been feeling about this pandemic. It's like we've all been in the middle of this war, and now media has to think of the role as we rebuild. And as we started this forum, I think that mental health is going to be an important issue that we're going to have to be looking at in order to help rebuild our country from an emotional point of view, also economic, of course, politics. But I think at this time, we've gone through so much together, and we've adapted to technology, and we've adapted to everything that was necessary. And maybe now we need to take a more important role in helping people become more comfortable with this new situation emotionally.
That was very inspiring and very interesting for me, and I'm sure also to the people who listen. So thank you for the opportunity. And now I guess we hand back to the Deutsche Welle Central. There you are.